We are back here on Titans Talk, talking about the Titans outbreak, COVID-19 cases, all the positive tests that came back in last week. Good news there, by the way, from what we are told again, most people, especially most of the players, asymptomatic. There are a few that, as Mike Vrabel told us last week, experienced some mild cold and flu-like symptoms, but nothing out of the ordinary, according to everybody that has had anything to say about it or report anything about it around the Titans, which is definitely good news when you think of all the numbers involved in this case. Lots to deal with here, lots to unpack. We tried to do that last night on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central with our guy Jonathan Hutton of Titans Radio with the information and what this means. Just how concerned should the Titans be right now? Obviously, they're concerned, but is this hit the panic button time? Here was Jay Hutt's answer to that. Joined now by our analyst Jonathan Hutton of Titans Radio. Jonathan, a week ago we were talking about a 3-0 football team after a big road win in Minnesota. Now we're talking about 20 positive COVID tests. Where should the Titans be on the scale between concerned and panicked right now?
Somewhere in the middle. I mean, I know they're concerned. I doubt they're panicked in a frenzy behind the scenes, being socially distanced from the facility and staying at home and working from home. I think the concern lies with, Steve, how long will this continue to go? Meaning, how long will we continue to see positive test results morning after morning? And if this continues to go into week 5, as we presume it now will, can they play week 5 against Buffalo? And how do they now get together and get a game plan and preparations going in case they're not allowed back in their facility? That, I think, is where the big concern lies, on top of the fact that they have the NFL and the NFLPA in town doing their own internal investigation of how the Titans handled everything.
Yeah, the NFL's test positivity rate's been remarkably low since the beginning of training camps, so it's no surprise they're trying to figure out how this happened. It's being reported, though, the Titans could face penalties or even lose draft picks depending on the results of this investigation. Should they?
It depends on how egregious the error was. And that's something that I think will be very difficult to figure out here, because we talked in the offseason about how the protocols were in line and how you can do everything right and the virus can still win in some ways. And we saw it happen presumably this past week with the Titans, where you had one positive test. They followed the protocols of playing. We know that because other teams have since had positive tests, and they play today or they're playing tomorrow with one positive. The difference is they're testing on game day now, and the Titans weren't tested, to my knowledge, on game day against Minnesota. So now you have to walk it back some. Were they wearing the wristbands, the figuring out how close they were distance-wise for contact tracing? Were they doing that, with dotting the I's and crossing the T's with that protocol? Did someone come in contact with COVID-19 and not report that? That would be certainly an egregious error. And if they knew ahead of time and still flew those players to Minnesota, those are all things and questions I would want to have answered. But I would find it hard to believe that the Titans would go outside the boundaries of what the NFL would have in place in order to play a football game. And they have been as careful as they have throughout the offseason. Every team has tried to do this properly. I would be surprised if the Titans were the team that stepped outside the line in terms of the way the protocols are written.
We'll see what the investigation shows. The most exclusive bubble in the world is inside the White House, and the virus got inside there in the past week as well.
That's right.
A lot of people looking at exactly what happened. Obviously, the NFL and the NFLPA is part of that. The chief medical officer for the National Football League is Dr. Alan Sills, a neurosurgeon down in Franklin, who's been on board with the NFL for 4 years now, and he's been a huge part of its charge against coronavirus and what they are doing to try to combat it within the league, the testing protocols, and all of that. He's certainly been an interested observer from up close or distant down in Franklin over the past week or so. And Dr. Sills made an appearance on the NFL Today on CBS on Sunday morning.
For more insight on how the NFL is dealing with the recent positive tests, we welcome in the league's chief medical officer, Alan Sills, who, if you will, has been in the situation room since preseason. Hey, Dr. Sills, the NFL certainly experiencing its first disruption of regular season games due to COVID-19. Is what we are seeing this week in regards to positive cases in line with expectations?
Well, I think it is, James. We said consistently that we expect to have some positive cases and that our goal here is to prevent any positive case from spreading around the team. So this is something we following those protocols for, following the plans that we laid out and trying to keep everyone as safe as possible.
And with that in mind, hey, Doc, from a medical standpoint, when is the earliest that we might expect to see Cam Newton, for instance, available to play again?
Well, per our protocols, it depends on whether he develops symptoms or not. If he does not have any symptoms, then he would come back either with 10 days from the date of the positive test, or if he has 2 consecutive negative tests after 5 days' time. If he develops symptoms, then he has to come back with what's called the 10+1 rule, which is the CDC guidance that it's 10 days from the positive test or onset of symptoms plus 1 day free of symptoms. So I think he would come back on one of those 2 plans, depending on whether or not he develops symptoms along the way.
And coattailing on your first answer as it relates to strict adherence to league COVID-19 protocols, what have you learned this past week? Any tweaking in order?
Well, I think you can expect us to make some updates based on what we're learning around the league. And we've said that that'll happen all throughout. We think that this is an opportunity for us to learn as we go forward. We know that testing will get better. We'll learn more about spread and transmission, update those protocols to try to keep everyone as safe as possible. So we're taking a really, really deep dive into the Tennessee situation, trying to learn all that we can for the benefit of everyone.
Jonathan, NFL COVID protocols were so clean through the first 3 weeks of the season. Now you have 1 game postponed, 1 game pushed back a day, and another in peril most of the week. Are you now worried about the league's ability to finish this season?
Not yet. I'm not worried that they'll get the season completed, Steve. I am a bit concerned about the 16-game season as we move forward here, because they could tack on an 18th week if they need to cancel a game and maneuver other games around some. But then what? And I think the way they have structured their season, they could have a 12-game season, a 14-game season, or a 16-game season, which they're currently trying to do right now. I don't think they want to reduce the seasons by games, but that may end up being their one big solution to everything if they need to take a week or 2 off, if we see what happened right here in Nashville around multiple NFL cities as we move forward.
Lots going on. Stay positive, test negative. Jay Hutt, hang tight.
All right. Thank you.